In the UK alone, the average person spends roughly 4 months of their entire life talking about the weather. 4 months.
Which is honestly a staggering amount of time when you really think about it.
Right. And I mean, while that might sound like just a punchline about British stereotypes, if you're an adult learning English as a second language, pointing at a gray cloud and knowing the word for it isn't just small talk.
No, it really isn't. It's actually a psychological survival tactic.
Exactly. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are so thrilled to have you here with us to unpack, well, basically an artifact of foundational language learning.
Yeah, today we're analyzing a transcript from an A1 beginner English lesson from a popular curriculum called English Bridge.
Specifically, we're looking at episode 7, which is titled, What's the Weather Like?
And the whole lesson is designed to teach basic weather vocabulary and grammar in just, like 6 to 7 minutes.
Yeah, and I like to think of learning a new language like installing a brand new operating system in your brain, right?
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right, and this specific source material, this short lesson, it's like downloading the very first most essential app, Small Talk 101.
I mean, on the surface, this document reads like a completely standard vocabulary drill, just designed to teach someone how to say rain and sun.
Right.
But beneath that incredibly simple veneer, it functions as a masterclass in behavioral psychology, cognitive framing, and cultural integration.
So today, we're going to explore the cultural weight behind teaching this specific topic so early in a curriculum.
Yeah, and we'll break down the precise linguistic tools the lesson provides, focusing on how sensory words are categorized in the brain.
And we'll also analyze the underlying psychological methods the instructors use to actively disarm a learner's insecurities.
Because that's huge.
Oh, totally. So like we said, the curriculum places this lesson at episode 7.
Which is so early.
Right. The learner has barely crossed the threshold into the English language. They likely have a vocabulary of fewer than 100 words, and they are immediately being handed the terminology for atmospheric conditions.
Yeah, and the source material backs up this placement with a very specific cultural claim. They emphasize that if you visit England, you will hear about the weather every single day.
Every single day. But, weather isn't just meteorological data in that cultural context, is it?
No, not at all. It functions as an essential social glue. You have to remember, for a beginner language learner, the outside world is this incredibly intimidating landscape of incomprehensible noise.
Oh, yeah, I can't even imagine.
Right, and they don't possess the linguistic tools to discuss politics or art or, personal philosophies.
So mastering weather talk provides this universal, completely safe bridge to connect with native speakers because it's rooted in a shared immediate reality.
Exactly.
I do have to push back on the priority of that, though.
Yeah.
If I am an adult trying to survive in a brand new country, pointing out that it's cloudy seems like a massive waste of precious cognitive resources.
You'd think so, yeah.
Right. Wouldn't it be far more practical for a beginner course to prioritize urgent human needs? I'd want to know how to navigate a grocery store or how to order food.
Or how to ask for directions to the bathroom.
Yes, the bathroom.
Yeah.
Prioritizing small talk over survival skills feels almost counterintuitive for an A1 learner.
So that frustration is actually a very common hurdle for adult learners who just want to get straight to the mechanically useful vocabulary.
Which makes sense.
It does. But that preference misunderstands the nature of human interaction and cognitive load. Things like ordering food or asking for directions are transactional interactions.
Meaning you ask for something and get it.
Exactly. You ask a question, you extract a piece of information or a service, and the conversation terminates. And more importantly, transactional interactions carry a high cognitive load because the stakes are personal.
Oh, I see. If you fail to order food correctly, you don't eat.
Right. And if you fail to find the bathroom, you have a literal crisis. Talking about the weather, however, is relational rather than transactional. It's the most democratic conversation starter on the planet.
Democratic because the stakes are entirely externalized, right? The rain is happening to everyone in that geographic radius simultaneously.
Exactly. It doesn't matter if you're the CEO of a multinational corporation or a new immigrant buying a cup of coffee. You are both experiencing the exact same puddle.
The exact same puddle. I love that. And because the event is external, it removes the spotlight from the individual learner.
Yeah, it provides a low-stakes practice ground where you can totally butcher the grammar saying "it is raining" instead of "it is raining," and the listener will still validate your observation.
Because that validation is really the core objective here.
Right. The goal of episode 7 isn't actually to make the learner a meteorologist. The goal is to build the physical and psychological habit of opening your mouth and speaking to a stranger.
It's about crossing that threshold of silence.
Exactly. The weather offers a socially sanctioned excuse to initiate contact without needing a specific reason, which effectively lowers the barrier to entry for human connection in a foreign environment.
So the topic is basically a strategic social safety net. But I mean, dropping a highly stressed adult learner into a lesson with dozens of meteorological terms would just spike their anxiety in a different way, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. But the lesson avoids that by being aggressively curated. They don't overwhelm the learner with atmospheric pressure systems or humidity indexes.
Right, they stick to a tiny, high-frequency set of sensory words: sunny, cloudy, rainy, windy, and snowy.
Yep.
And they provide a basic temperature scale: hot, warm, cool, cold, and freezing.
And the inclusion of that specific scale is cognitively brilliant. Human brains learn abstract concepts most efficiently through contrast and spectrums.
So rather than giving the learner isolated adjectives, the lesson provides a continuum of sensation.
Exactly. And notice how they define freezing. They completely ignore scientific definitions or the Celsius versus Fahrenheit debate.
Oh yeah, the source literally just defines freezing practically as minus temperatures in winter.
Right, which grounds the abstract language in a visceral bodily sensation.
And that visceral mapping continues when they introduce the four seasons: spring, summer, autumn, which they smartly note is called fall in American English, and winter.
Yeah, the curriculum attaches strong visual associations to these seasons instead of just translating the words. Spring is paired with growing flowers, summer with intense heat and sun, autumn with falling leaves.
And they pair all of this with really practical clothing vocabulary, too. They explicitly link the word rain to an umbrella or a raincoat. They link cold to a scarf and coat, and sunny to sunglasses.
Those visual and physical pairings are doing incredibly heavy lifting behind the scenes. When a curriculum pairs the English word umbrella directly with the physical reality of rain, it actively bypasses the translation layer in the brain.
Meaning you don't have to think in your native language first.
Right. If you learn purely through flashcards, your brain has to translate the English word into your native tongue and then map your native tongue to the concept.
Sounds exhausting.
It is. By linking the new vocabulary directly to sensory experiences and physical objects, the lesson forces the brain to map the linguistic tag straight to the physical reality. It accelerates the speed of recall because you aren't mentally translating, you're simply observing and labeling.
So the vocabulary creates the labels, but the grammar rules provide the momentum. The lesson restricts its grammar focus to just two structures.
Right.
First, the present continuous tense for current weather, like it is raining or it is snowing.
Yeah.
And second, the use of the modal verb will plus a base verb for forecasts.
Giving the learner the ability to say, it will be sunny tomorrow.
Yeah. I kind of view this like handing the learner a pair of temporal binoculars.
Oh, like that.
One lens, the present continuous, lets them describe exactly what is right in front of them, while the other lens, will plus a verb, lets them look over the horizon to predict the future.
And the mechanical elegance of that specific grammatical pairing completely alters the learner's relationship with time. In your native language, you effortlessly glide between the past, the present, and the future. You possess complete temporal agency.
But as a beginner language learner, you're often trapped in this eternal, simplistic present tense. You only have the tools to point at what is directly in front of you.
Right. Supplying the present continuous anchors the learner in their immediate sensory environment, allowing them to participate in the current reality, but handing them that simple will structure acts as a cognitive lever.
It allows them to shift from a passive observer of the present into an active participant in the future.
Exactly. With just a handful of nouns, 5 basic adjectives, and those 2 simple verb structures, an absolute beginner is suddenly empowered to make predictions and participate in planning.
It restores a small fraction of the agency they lost when they stepped into a new language.
It fundamentally upgrades the learner's capacity to navigate the world. But supplying the mechanical tools is only half the battle. We also have to look at the delivery mechanism.
Oh, absolutely. The pedagogy of the lesson is driven by 2 instructors, Sara and Tom, and their approach is completely saturated in this highly interactive, unrelenting emotional support.
Yes. The interaction is modeled through a role-play segment. Tom describes his current environment, noting his city is 10 degrees cold, cloudy, and likely to rain.
Which Sara immediately validates by calling it typical British weather, effectively modeling the social glue we discussed earlier.
Right, and then Sarah contrasts this by describing her own city as a perfect 22 degrees sunny day.
And then the lesson literally breaks the fourth wall. The video prompts the viewer to pause the playback and practice describing their own city's weather out loud.
Prompting the learner to physically produce the sounds of the language in the safety of their own environment bridges the gap between passive comprehension and active production.
The most striking element of that prompt, to me at least, is the tone of the script. The instructors continually pepper the lesson with intense reassurance.
They really do.
They look directly at the camera and deliver lines like, "Every single episode, your English is getting stronger, mistakes help you learn faster, and even you are doing something wonderful."
It's very enthusiastic.
It is. And honestly, I tend to view this kind of highly enthusiastic, cheerleader-like tone with a degree of skepticism.
Sure, that makes sense.
Like, it's very easy to see it as a modern internet tactic, a calculated way to flatter the audience, boost parasocial engagement, and secure those thumbs-ups and channel subscriptions they politely ask for at the end of the video.
Yeah.
So is there actual scientific efficacy to this kind of aggressive positivity for adult learners? Or is it just YouTube fluff?
Well, it is entirely valid to view internet content creation through a cynical lens, especially when engagement metrics are involved.
Right.
However, from a neurological and pedagogical standpoint, this specific brand of relentless positivity is rooted in a critical concept in language acquisition known as the affective filter.
The affective filter. Okay, break that down for us.
So when an adult attempts to learn a new language, their ego is under massive threat. In their native language, they are competent, articulate, and nuanced. In the target language, they're basically reduced to the communicative capacity of a toddler.
Which is brutal. The brain basically registers that loss of competence as a profound social vulnerability.
Precisely. The amygdala, right, the part of the brain that processes fear and social threat, begins to sound an alarm. This creates the affective filter, which is a psychological block.
Oh, wow.
When the filter is high due to anxiety or self-consciousness or just the fear of looking foolish, the brain enters a mild state of fight or flight. And in that state, cognitive resources are entirely consumed by managing the emotional threat.
Meaning you literally can't learn.
Exactly. The prefrontal cortex, which handles complex, rule-based processing like grammar and vocabulary retention, is effectively suppressed. You could have the most brilliantly designed lesson on the present continuous tense, but if the learner's affective filter is raised, the brain physically will not absorb the linguistic data.
That is fascinating. So that relentless positivity isn't just fluffy pandering for YouTube algorithms. It's actively disarming the amygdala.
Exactly. By explicitly telling the learner that mistakes help you learn faster, the instructors are artificially signaling safety. They are lowering the stakes of failure.
But creating this warm, deeply empathetic environment, they basically coax the affective filter down, allowing the prefrontal cortex to come back online and actually process the vocabulary.
Yeah. The encouragement is a biological hack. It's a highly calculated pedagogical tool disguised as friendly internet banter. Without that psychological safety net, the linguistic building blocks would just bounce right off the learner's defensive walls.
And this curriculum doesn't just lower the walls and hand over the tools. It demands that the tools be taken out of the classroom environment and utilized in the real world.
Yes, the practice tip.
Right. At the very end of the transcript, the lesson provides a specific practice tip. The learner is instructed to look outside their window every single morning for the next week and declare the weather out loud in English.
Like, today it is sunny and warm.
Exactly. And the instructors emphasize that practicing even just 10 minutes a day makes a huge difference in retention. It reminds me of taking a daily multivitamin. Just a tiny 10-second frictionless habit that requires no extra equipment but yields massive compounding results over time.
That single directive might actually be the most powerful piece of educational design in the entire document, honestly, because it leverages the mechanics of automaticity and habit formation.
Because it completely bypasses the reliance on willpower.
Right. Exactly. If a learner sets a vague goal like, I need to study my English textbook for an hour today, that requires a massive amount of cognitive friction. You have to find the time, gather the materials, and motivate yourself to sit down.
But the lesson employs a strategy that looks exactly like habit stacking.
Yes. Tying a new, highly difficult behavior to an automatic, deeply ingrained existing behavior.
It's like a pilot fish swimming alongside a shark. The pilot fish, the new habit of speaking English, doesn't have to generate its own momentum. It just attaches itself to the massive, unstoppable momentum of the shark. which in this case is the inevitable morning routine.
That's a great image. Every single morning, a person wakes up. Every single morning, they inevitably check the window or step outside to see what the atmosphere is doing so they know how to dress.
And the lesson strategically hijacks that existing trigger.
By attaching the English vocabulary to the built-in trigger of the morning window check, the lesson completely removes the cognitive cost of initiation. The window itself basically becomes the instructor. It cues the behavior automatically.
And by repeating this tiny 10-second declarative sentence every day for a week, the learner initiates the process of moving the vocabulary out of fragile, short-term working memory and encoding it into durable, long-term procedural memory.
And crucially, doing this alone in your kitchen or bedroom maintains that lowered effective filter we talked about. You're just speaking to the clouds. There is absolutely zero social threat.
It builds the physical muscle memory in your jaw and tongue of producing English sounds, bridging that massive gap between knowing a word silently in your head and feeling the physical comfort of actually vibrating your vocal cords to say it out loud.
Yeah. When we pull back and look at the architecture of Episode 7, we see that the simplest concepts in language learning carry the heaviest developmental load.
Right.
A basic vocabulary drill about sunshine and rain is engineered to culturally integrate the learner, provide temporal agency through grammar, bypass neurological anxiety through empathy, and hack the brain's habit loops for long-term retention.
It is a phenomenal foundation. And the curriculum immediately capitalizes on that foundation, because the transcript includes a brief teaser for the next lesson in the series, Episode 8, which is titled At the Doctor.
Oh, that's quite a jump.
It is. The curriculum takes the learner from the absolute lowest stakes social interaction observing the weather and graduates them directly into a high-stakes, highly personal scenario.
Because navigating a medical visit requires the exact same foundational confidence, but the outcome impacts personal health and well-being.
It's a brilliant escalation of responsibility, really proving that the weather was just the training ground for navigating the real world.
The progression from observing an external shared environment to articulating an internal vulnerable state demonstrates a really deep understanding of how to carefully stretch a learner's capacity without breaking their confidence.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up our analysis today, there's a fascinating paradox embedded in this entire curriculum that is worth examining.
Okay, what's that?
Well, the entire pedagogical foundation of this lesson relies on the premise that the weather is a neutral, inherently safe, universally relatable topic. It is the ultimate low-stakes icebreaker.
Right.
But when we look at the broader context of our current global reality, that foundational truth feels like it's rapidly shifting.
Oh, that is a critical tension to consider. Historically, commenting on a hot day or a heavy rainstorm was the definition of phatic communion, language used purely for social pleasantries.
Yeah.
But as global climate change accelerates, making weather patterns increasingly extreme, highly unpredictable, and frequently devastating, the nature of that topic changes. Discussing the weather is becoming deeply politically charged in many circles.
Exactly. I mean, if a language learner uses their newly acquired vocabulary to point out a massive unseasonal heat wave or an aggressive storm, they might no longer be engaging in simple small talk.
Right.
They could inadvertently be stepping onto a landmine of climate anxiety or political debate or personal trauma, depending on who they're speaking to.
It really forces us to ask what happens to the dynamics of language acquisition when the safest, most mundane conversation starter historically available to humanity slowly transforms into a source of anxiety.
Yeah.
If the weather loses its neutrality, future language learners may lose their most reliable bridge for connecting with strangers in a new culture.
A profound thought to leave you with. The very first tool you acquire to safely navigate a new language might be getting significantly more complicated to use in the real world.
Something to think about.
Definitely something for you to mull over the next time you look out your window to check the sky. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the structures around you, keep learning, and we will catch you next time.